Okay. We're going to continue on in our series in Ezra. And last week, if you remember, we spoke about dedicating ourselves to God. And today, we've witnessed Saraya doing just that, haven't we? Through the waters of baptism. And we've also heard about Pippa doing the same over in Todmorden back in June. But of course, we said last week, didn't we, that the action of dedicating ourselves to God isn't merely a one-off thing, but rather it's something that we are encouraged to do on a daily basis, recognizing that as followers of Jesus, both individually and collectively, we're encouraged to carry him with us into our world, to be the place where heaven and earth overlap. And as we look at today's passage, which we're going to do in just a moment, we see one of the ways that we are able to dedicate ourselves to God. The passage is from Ezra chapter 7, verses 1 to 10. And again, I was going to get someone to read this, and as I read it, you can be thankful that I didn't pick you to read this. After this, in the reign of King Artaxerxes of Persia, Ezra, son of Saraya, son of Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Shallum, son of Zadok, son of Ahitub, son of Amara, son of Azariah, son of Meraioth, son of Zerahiah, son of Uzzi, son of Bukki, son of Ebishu, son of Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of the chief priest Aaron. This Ezra went up from Babylonia. He was a scribe skilled in the law of Moses that the Lord, the God of Israel, had given. And the king granted him all that he asked, for the hand of the Lord his God was upon him. Some of the people of Israel and some of the priests and Levites, the singers and gatekeepers and the temple servants also went up to Jerusalem in the 7th year of King Artaxerxes. They came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of the king. On the 1st day of the 1st month, the journey up from Babylon was begun, and on the 1st day of the 5th month, he came to Jerusalem, for the gracious hand of his God was upon him. For Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord, and to do it, and to teach the statutes and ordinances in Israel. Now, the first thing to say here about this passage, other than, aren't you glad you didn't have to read out that list of names? The first thing to say is that the phrase, after this, which is right at the beginning of the passage, is doing a bit of kind of heavy lifting here. Because the passage that we looked at last week with the dedication of the new temple comes right before this passage in the Bible. But yet chronologically, we know that there are at least kind of 50 years between the two events, and possibly as much as 100. And it's at this point that Ezra, the one who the book is named after, is introduced. And with him, with the introduction of Ezra into the book of Ezra, the emphasis of the book shifts. Because up until this point, the kind of emphasis has been on rebuilding the city, and in particular the temple, following the exiles' return from Babylon. But now the emphasis of the book shifts to the rebuilding of the people, to the rebuilding of the community. And at the beginning of the passage, Ezra is still in Babylon, which means that his family were one of those who chose not to make the journey back when King Cyrus issued his decree that the exiles could return. But even there in Babylon, having been brought up there, that would be the only home that he had ever known, probably at least 2, maybe even 3 generations removed from those that were taken into exile in the first place. Even there, back in Babylon, Ezra is devoted to studying the law of Moses, which is shorthand for their scriptures, or we would say Bible. And because of that, he is moved to make the journey from Babylon to Jerusalem, to teach the people there, so that they would have the law of Moses, the scriptures, at the heart of their community and at the heart of all that they did. If you remember back to the beginning of January, and I know it's a long time ago, so it might be a struggle, and we were online, but back at the beginning of January, we looked at the passage from 1 Chronicles chapter 16, which contains our verse for the year, which you all know, of course, off by heart. It's seek the Lord and his strength, seek his presence continually. See how I did that without even reading? But we looked at that passage from 1 Chronicles 16, and we saw that David, having become king of Israel from Saul, wanted to lead the people back toward God. And so he brought the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the law of Moses, and placed it into a tent at the heart of Jerusalem. And it was to be a visible reminder to the people to place God and his word at the centre of their lives together. And so essentially, Ezra is just doing the same here. He doesn't have the Ark of the Covenant to bring with him. That was lost, never to be recovered when the Babylonians took Jerusalem. But he does have his knowledge and his passion for the scriptures, and he's determined to bring that, and with it to inspire those in Jerusalem to cultivate the same. Because you see, Ezra recognizes just how crucial that is for the people. He recognizes that it's not enough for them just to be back in the land. That it's not enough for them even to be back worshipping in the temple. The crucial thing for the people of Jerusalem was to be back in covenant relationship with God. And Ezra recognizes what they need in order to grow that. And I think for us, it's much the same, isn't it? It's not enough for us just to come to church each week. It's not enough even just to be baptized and to become a church member. As exciting and as exhilarating as that is to be baptized, if that's where it ends, then it's not enough. What matters is our relationship with God. And just like Ezra, we can grow that relationship by spending time with God in prayer and in allowing God to speak to us through his words, the Bible. And so there's a reason that we give out Bibles to those who are baptized, as we've just done with Saraya. It's because the Bible is important. It's how we learn about who God is, about what God does, and about how we fit into his story. But even then, just having a Bible isn't enough. Some friends of mine who are Baptist ministers are going through the settlement process at the moment. That's the process by which they kind of look for a new church to go and to be minister at. And they were having a bit of a sort of laugh and a joke this week about some of the phrases that get put in the kind of profiles you get from churches. You know, when churches are looking for a minister and they send it, it's like a sort of job description. And some of the phrases that get put in there and the kind of codes that they are, if you like. So for instance, you know, a lot of them say, we're seeking a minister who is patient, which probably means that, you know what, actually our congregation is full of really awkward people, and so you're going to need some patience if you're going to be minister here. Or we're looking for a minister who enjoys leading services and preaching. Probably means we don't actually have anyone else to do it, and so when you come, you're not going to be able to have any Sundays off. You're going to be on every week. My favourite, though, as they were kind of sharing some of them with me, was we're looking for a minister who has a sense of humour, which I think probably covers all of that and more, doesn't it? One of the phrases, though, that gets used in these kind of things, these sort of church profiles, and on church websites and the like as well, and it is kind of a code in itself, I think, is we are a Bible-believing church. Now, I always find that kind of an odd thing to say, that we are a Bible-believing church. Not because I disagree with it, but because I've yet to come across a church that would openly say, well, we don't really believe the Bible. Although, as I say, it's kind of usually probably code for we hold a particular interpretation of the Bible on certain matters. And we're not going to get into that now. But notwithstanding that, it's still, I think, a strange claim to make. Because the goal isn't, or it shouldn't be, I don't think, believing the Bible. You see, the requirement for a relationship with God isn't, do you believe every word in this book? For a start, the Bible is made up of all sorts of different literature. There's kind of poems in there, there's stories, there's parables, there's letters, there's kind of pearls of wisdom. Like the book of Proverbs is just a sort of collection of kind of little bits of wisdom. And so the question is not necessarily, do you believe this? As we saw when we looked at the story of Jonah, that was probably, or most probably, a parable, a story that was used to teach a point rather than a historical account of something that actually took place. But that doesn't lessen its importance in any way or its value to us. So the question isn't, do you believe this? But rather, what are you going to do about this? Look at what it says in today's passage about Ezra. Ezra had set his heart to study the law of the Lord and to do it and to teach the statutes and ordinances in Israel. How much better would it be to say that we are a Bible-reading church rather than a Bible-believing church or a Bible-teaching church? Or better still, we are a Bible-applying church. Because you see, we don't give you these Bibles so that they can sit on a shelf at home. They're not just something pretty to look at. They're not just to be used as a doorstop, although they are useful for that occasionally. We want you to read the Bible. And not just in the way that you would read a textbook. It's not just something kind of to memorize and to learn off by heart. But instead, read it and allow God to speak to you through it. Because I believe that when we do that, it changes us. It moves us. It affects the way we live our lives, from the very smallest things right up to the really big stuff. And so then we become people that not only read the Bible, but who, like Ezra, do it too. People who apply the word of God to our lives, who carry it with us in each and every situation that we find ourselves in. And then finally, as we encounter the living God in the pages of this book, so might we be moved to do as Jesus commanded and to lead others to find him too. Encouraging them to find not the God of our own personal interpretation or doctrine, but the living, holy God who still speaks to us, inspires us, and finds us through his eternal word. Amen.